Since we're on the topic of coming up with these different ideas, as an artist, I think one of the most important things that we all need to do is sort of keep this balance within our own mental health. I think, the best creatives are oftentimes the ones who know how to strike that balance between their work and, their leisure. When you are feeling overwhelmed or bogged down, what's your escape? What's your non-music related thing to do to recenter yourself?
So the non-music related thing that I do is um, I meditate.
Hmm.
Yeah, I started doing more internal work, like
Uh-huh.
soul searching and stuff. Um, and I could basically, I would have never thought that it worked. I would just think like, oh, that's just a mumbo jumbo, somebody.
Uh-huh. But you had a moment.
But yeah, and I tried. I was like, okay, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. And another reason why I started taking it up was because also my wife, Princess, she was kind of um, messing around with the idea and trying it out to calm herself and whatnot. And I started doing it. Um, and I can say that it is super beneficial. I never thought I would be one of those people that like totally like promotes it, like but it is. Just calm your mind, unplug from the so-called, rat race,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially lockdown.
Oh yeah, now's the perfect time.
Just yeah, definitely. A lot of people can do a lot of social. I mean, you have time. You
Hmm.
only have time on your hands now, so it could be learn a new skill. That's a skill. I know most people are like, you're just sitting there with your eyes closed. You look like you want to nap. You're just sitting instead. There's a lot going on.
Oh
Trust me.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So, um, things like that. A lot of philosophy. When I started scratching the surface, I started like looking at other folks that do this a lot. A lot of uh, uh, Thich Thich Nhat Hanh is another one. I know. I feel like a lot of people like are starting to hear his name a lot. I believe he's a monk. I'm not sure which country he's from.
Hmm.
Escapes me at the moment. A lot of his, I had purchased a book of his like years and years ago, and I shelved it somewhere. Um, Princess found it and started reading it, and she would quote and bring up some of the passages in there, and I'm
Hmm.
like, where the heck are you getting so deep? Where did this come from? Did you watch a movie? Or reading a book? Remember that? I know, right? Yeah. So she's like, "You remember that book you bought me a long time ago?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it's like a little pocketbook." It was all this crazy deep knowledge and wisdom was because this beautiful man wrote in such a way, and it was speaking to me, and I was just like, okay, then, and this goes back to what I was saying before. You could see something then, and it would mean absolutely nothing to you.
Hmm.
Years
Hmm.
later, now it resonates for some reason, and I really believe that. And it probably sounds a little, it sounds like a fear or something, but like I feel like I was destined to not care then, and then now it's just speaking to me because I'm ready to hear.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, not just with my physical ears, but with like my heart, my mind, and my soul. So, and so I started, reading up on some of his writings, the Dalai Lama. I started my Spotify account, which is a really awesome app for just music in general. I don't need to lug around all my stuff, and I have a lot of CDs.
Hmm.
I now listen to a lot of podcasts
Hmm.
where they go on guided meditations. So it really helps. It really helps, just like clear your mind from anything. Sometimes, you could be working too hard, even in music or art or whatever, and this stuff really it really like helps one's mind blossom. And I really feel like without it, I wouldn't be able to put out the type of music I'm doing now, like the quality, in terms of quality and in terms of creativity. I feel like I'm able to bring more to the table as a result of, expanding my so-called horizon. Right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I do a lot of that stuff. Hiking when I can. I know it's not okay to do that, and
Hmm.
find a lot of money for seeing outside, and even 10 feet from a park. But yeah, a lot of I'm trying to be in tune with myself, with nature, and just the world in general. Um, yeah, and I hear a lot of people, on social media, they get a lot of these posts that are saying, one, we're just one huge family. When someone does something on one side of the world, to think that the other half is, is not affected is kind of naive.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, even indirectly, you don't need to be a musician, being proactively trying to, share your work and, promoting veganism or meditation
Hmm.
or whatever. You could be just some innocent person indirectly doing something, snowball into something crazy, you know. Um, some people say that the pandemic that we're experiencing now is something along those lines. So
And
yeah,
you mentioning the that idea of like it almost felt like it had to happen where you didn't read
yeah,
that book before and you ended up reading it later on, and that's kind of interesting because that um, mirrors a similar thing that I'd been going through because within the last few years I'd been focusing more on mental health. Within the last year I went to uh, isolation tanks like float tank therapy, and really
nice.
trying to.
I'd love to do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, because that's the thing is like I'm like my mind is too busy to do meditation. My brother's always been into meditation, but I was like,
Oh,
okay, this this float tank thing is kind of cool. It's sort of like it helps you jumpstart into the meditation mindset, and
right.
now I'm like, oh, that's what it's like to be in my head, like really in my
Yeah,
head, and then now I'm like,
yeah.
oh shit, well, obviously I can't go to those float tanks right now. So now I'm sort of thinking like, okay, well, like how the hell do I start this whole meditation thing? Because that's my
Right.
problem. It's like just trying to quiet down the brain.
Yeah.
What sort of like if you had to give a quick little advice for people who've never meditated, like what's the thing that puts you over? That's like, oh, now it makes sense. Now I want to pursue this.
Um, yeah, well, I always wanted to do one of those isolation tanks. I had no idea that's what Daredevil was doing. The one with Ben Affleck, like that's what that was. I thought
Yeah.
that was just something that he does because he's a superhero. But I was like, no, that's an isolation tank for God's sakes. Like that's what it was. Um, so yeah, for those that are interested, they don't know how to start it. Oh, that's hard. For me, the first like several tries, it was I felt like I was just wasting my time. I felt like I was such a pro, like sitting there and just like, what do you expect to happen? Are you gonna, you know, what are you like Neo or something? And you just have this omnipotent power and you just unlocked it out of nowhere just
Yeah.
because. So I would say there's different ways to do it. What comes to mind now is like Tony Robbins.
Hmm.
He says he just can't for the life of him sit down and do that traditional, Tibetan monk type where you're
Hmm.
just, crisscross applesauce and you're just like one with the universe. He says it just doesn't work for him.
Hmm.
Some people they can meditate as they walk.
Wow.
I've tried that. That's what he does. I don't know. There's too much sensory like information. You know, if you have to cross the street, you don't want to be,
Yeah.
glazed
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
traffic. You could get hurt. So obviously you could hike and you could be that if I'm hiking, that helps.
Mm.
Um, but um, I know that a lot of there's different degrees.
Hmm.
Some people play, an instrument, and to them that's meditation. I know Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh.
Yeah, and ever since I started delving into this, I started seeing a lot of different celebrities do this, and people you wouldn't even think. Like I just mentioned, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He
Uh-huh.
would say lifting was his form of meditation.
Mm,
Yeah, and
okay,
so
okay.
yeah, so I don't think there's one perfect way. As long as the I know that the effect afterwards, you just feel um you're you feel like you've done something healthy spiritually. Like when I am finished meditating for like 10, 15 minutes, I do it the traditional way. I need silence. I need to get in, my head a little bit
Hmm.
and clear my mind. I feel like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. I feel so much more clear. It's just clarity. Um, some other folks, I guess, is a different effect when they, you know, lift weights or when they, you know, hike or whatever. But for me, if I the number one effect I feel is just I feel light. I feel like my head isn't just shrunk in
Yeah.
size. It's not, I always feel like my head is like this huge balloon. But
Hmm.
after I do the hike, I do a lot of breathing. Like I inhale for about 5 seconds and I exhale for about 5 seconds, and I do that about maybe 5 to 10 times, and I control my heart rate, and I just feel at peace. It's just crazy way to describe it. But I would highly recommend it if you just have to figure out. There's so many different ways to do it. Either you do it the traditional way, you're in a quiet room. Um, some people say that it works best if you can find an actual quiet room. You can't. You need at least 10 minutes. I know Oprah. I just heard she does 20 minutes, one in the morning, one at night, and she says like an emergency could be happening, and she would be totally just oblivious to it because she's just so in it.
So in it.
She's just so into what's going on. Like you need to like shake her, and hey, you know, is it, your house is on fire or something. So I was like, wow, some people can just like go really deep, and just and it's really good for your mental health, your soul, whatever you believe in. Some people say like it helps them connect to God a lot better. So I really advocate it. It's really helpful. It's
That's cool.
really
Yeah, like
helpful.
I I think that advice of looking at meditation as less of like, oh, this is how you do it, as opposed to, well, there are many ways to do it, and it's more of like, how do you get into that meditative mindset, and how do you get into that
Right.
place? Because everyone, I assume, is like, their meditative experience and how they get to that place and how they feel is totally different, and sort of
Yeah.
going into what we were talking about earlier about trying to get into the right mindset. um, you have been working on something. You are currently working on a debut album that's slated for a 2020 release, but obviously, the timing, the age of
Yeah.
coronavirus.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Yes.
so if your usual approach to promote this thing is to play venues and go to different events,
Yeah.
how has the coronavirus changed your album release, and what are you going to do now that, or what would you do if, say, this lockdown doesn't end for another year or something?
Okay. Right. So, um, well, again, thank God for the day and age that we live in. You don't need to walk physically to your local record store and buy this off the shelf and come in contact with all these other people. It's going to the debut album, self-titled Alameda Ash, will be released on all major streaming platforms. You know, Spotify, Apple Music. Um, that plus, um, you know, you it really depends on how creative one is. Some folks still perform via live stream. You know,
Hmm.
they haven't postponed their tour, like actual location, maybe,
Hmm.
but they would still perform at home or in a studio. So I'm really still in the process of how I would promote it via live um, performances, but I'm looking heavily into that. Um, but it's still up in the air. But again, I am definitely looking at some form of live streaming. You know, kind of I guess music debut. Another artist, local artist, Fantastic Negrito. He's been doing that heavily. He actually he's a fellow roots and blues musician
Hmm.
from Oakland. And I know he has something coming out in July, but I don't know if that's still happening.
Yeah.
So a lot of these artists are just, you know, converting into this, you know, streaming type thing. So I really believe that would be something that I would do. But besides that, everything else is still the same. You know, music video is still gonna be, you know, released. Um, a lot of the merchandise that comes, you know, packaged with the release, that's still, you know, available if anyone, you know, is willing to purchase. You know, a lot of people are having trouble financially now, so
Hmm.
I understand if you know if a T-shirt from your favorite band is not a priority, you know, and food is, but
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
water or shelter. Um, but yeah, like I said, it's like it's amazing to be, you know, I'm grateful to be uh, in this day and age where, you know, 30 years ago, you probably would just like cut off everything.
Yeah, that was
You
it.
wouldn't do anything. Yeah. But with, you know, I'm able to have an interview with you and still, you know, following the guidelines of social distancing, right? So, right. So taking advantage of these platforms, you know, again, it's like what we touched on earlier, you know, the reason why a lot of these artists are DIY or underground or do it yourself or indie because they can really get to their fan base. They really can connect, and it's a matter of, you know, launching the app and just clicking, you know,
Record.
your IG Live or record or whatever, or you know, tune in, Facebook stream, anything, Zoom. So it's like it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's seamless. You know, the world is really connected. We take it for granted, but we really are. You know, we don't need a carrier pigeon to send someone, you know, across the Atlantic, you know, how you're doing, and you're gonna get it 3 months later if you ever do. It's everything is by the push of a button. So yeah, you know, we are all a huge family, and it's not hard to stay connected with one another. Uh, so yeah, I think
Yeah, man.
we just do something like that.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about how the timing of the coronavirus at in an age where we can take advantage of Uber Eats and we can
Yeah,
use social media and we can use Zoom, and it's like there are so many things in place right now that weren't there 5 years ago that if we didn't
yeah,
have this, we would be totally screwed right now. And so
yeah,
we,
exactly.
like you said, we really are we really do overlook a lot of things, and a lot of the blessings that we do have. Now, Ash, I had a great time chatting with you. I just have one last question.
Likewise.
What are you working on, and where can we find you?
Um, I am currently working on music, as always. I'm working once this album drops, and it's releasing on Wednesday, May 20th.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's right around the corner. Once this drops, I'm going to, you know, keep the momentum going. I have a single that I
Hmm.
would like to release. I guess sometime in the summer,
Hmm.
relatively close to the album drop. So it's a new single. Um, it's gonna be uh, it's gonna be more of an acoustic style. So it's something that a lot of people haven't seen. I'm always on the electric guitar, and that's gonna be my tone down a little bit. Uh, it's
All
not
right,
gonna be
cool.
like extreme or like that, like more than words style. But who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah, yeah.
So you can find me on my main website, ashkhajvandi.com. You can listen to all my stuff there. It's a work in progress. It's DIY, so it's linked to all my stuff. Spotify account, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Um, or if you frequent Instagram a lot, you can find me. You can type in Alameda Ash, and you can find me there in the search. Um, Twitter, same thing, Alameda Ash. Facebook, Alameda Ash. YouTube, it's all under Alameda Ash. And I try to stay on top and of all that, and keep people updated what I'm doing in the meantime. So um, yeah, I hope the music that I release will touch someone's heart somewhere and make them forget about the the world for a bit. It's kind of dark times, but there's always a silver lining. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's very true. As much chaos is happening around, there are little moments, whether it's opportunity to meditate or opportunities to sort of work on our skills or work on a project. I'm glad that a lot of us are able to sort of use that time. But again, Ash, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. I love picking your
Thank you.
brain. Whenever you drop your album, let us know. I love your music, like
Definitely.
legitimate, like not even as like, oh, you're from the Bay Area, you're Filipino. Like I think that you have some dope music, and I'd love to go ahead and share it with people on the page.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you. I will definitely connect with you.
definitely. All right, thanks, Ash.
All right.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care, man.